everyone in Britain is fully aware how the Ukraine crisis looks from London, from Washington, and from Kiev.
How it looks from the Donbass and from Moscow, not so much. Helping us understand more is RT's youngest correspondent and one of the very best in Moscow, Donald Kurter. Thanks for joining us on board the Sputnik. You're making a documentary film about this area. Let's call it the Donbass. It's the so-called People's Republics that lie out with the jurisdiction of the government in Kiev, though still within the internationally recognized borders of the Ukrainian state. Who are these people? And how are they Russian? And why does Russia feel they have some obligation to them?
Well, thanks a lot for the invitation to Sputnik. I really appreciate it. But yeah, I am filming a documentary film on what's going on there, the current state of the conflict in Ukraine. And basically, these people of the Lugansk and Donetsk self-proclaimed People's Republics, they declared independence from Ukraine after they saw the events of 2014, the Euromaidan coup d'etat that they saw was backed by neo-fascist militias. And, they really feel very close to their Soviet heritage of anti-fascism in Ukraine, while, a lot of people in Western Ukraine are holding banners of supporting the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists that was headed by Stepan Bandera and collaborated with the Nazis in World War II. So, and another thing is that most people there speak Russian, the vast majority. This is why the people of the People's Republics really see themselves much closer to Russia than in Ukraine. Right now, the administrations there are pursuing a policy of pushing for integration with Russia, actually. They see themselves as, the same Russian people that live in the Russian Federation, and they want to become a part of the Russian Federation. And even though, Moscow doesn't recognize the independence of the People's Republics, many times Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, has referred to the people in this region as, their people, the Russian people. And he's said, they will be defended by Russia if aggression is made against them.
Some of them are, in fact, Russian citizens, passport holders, aren't they?
Yeah, that's correct. A couple of years ago, there was a program that basically the Russian government put forward to make it easier for the people of the People's Republics to get Russian citizenship, because they have their own administrations, they have their own passports, they're citizens, they have their own passports from the People's Republic of Lugansk, the People's Republic of Donetsk. And I think this is a way for the Russian government to, help out the people there, and especially for those who really, want Russian citizenship. Because I think actually, part of the reason why the People's Republics are very strongly pursuing integration with Russia, it has a lot to do with their identity, their common identity with Russia, but it also has to do with the fact that I think a lot of people feel that integration with Russia is going to mean, peace in that region. It's going to mean an end to the conflict in where they are, and an end to, what I saw firsthand when I was filming this documentary, indiscriminate artillery shelling of both military and civilian positions alike in Donbass.
Why would it mean peace, though? It would merely move the front line, wouldn't it? If agreement was reached, for example, unlikely though it is, even though Joe Biden did hint about minor incursions, if these so-called People's Republics were absorbed into Russia, that would merely move the border between Russia and Ukraine, between Russia and NATO, just a few miles to the west.
That's correct. But I think, what a lot of people think is that the Ukrainian government right now has no problem engaging in this war with these People's Republics that are not internationally recognized. If it were to become part of Russia, and that would mean that Ukraine would have to wage a war against Russia, which it knows it can't do by itself. And if it had the help of the West, it would mean World War III. It's a scenario that nobody wants, all of the West fighting Russia with Ukraine. But, the reason I think there's been a sort of escalation as of late over the past several months. I mean, I think it started with the Ukrainian government. Elections are coming up in 2024. This war has been in a stalemate, and Zelensky has to show results. And I think the only way, he's going to get it is if he can show his electorate that he won this war. He made advances, and he can only do it with the help of the United States and NATO. And that's why I think, it's really Ukraine that has an interest here in escalating the conflict there.
Now, Donald, if you say that the people from these republics identify themselves as Russian, they affiliate themselves more towards Russia, how would you describe the people on the other side of the line? How do they identify themselves? What is the Ukrainian identity?
Well, it's a good question, and it's really hard to do. I mean, because of the fact that Russian culture, Russian people, and Ukrainian people. I mean, they historically came from basically the same place. Now, I guess you could say, I mean, there is the Ukrainian language. There are traditions that some people say are specific to Ukraine, but at least what I saw on the line of confrontation between the Kiev-controlled forces and the People's Republics, this line of confrontation goes right through Lugansk and Donetsk, actually. So the people on the other side of the line of confrontation, right on the other side, a lot of them also consider themselves Russian. This Donbass region, actually, we went to a lot of museums, we spoke to a lot of people, and a lot of people actually think that, they consider the Donbass region, that it should have never been part of Ukraine because of a territorial decision that was made when Ukraine became a unified state to begin with, around after the Bolshevik Revolution. A lot of people say that this was a mistake, that Donbass was included in Ukraine because they considered themselves Russian even back then. But, a lot of the reality is that a lot of people speak Russian in Ukraine, and right now in the Kiev-controlled places, a lot of that is coming under attack because they're trying to assert this, the Kiev government is trying to assert this separate Ukrainian identity that they're saying is completely separate from Russia, even though I don't think that's possible to do because of how close their histories are. But, we just recently saw the fact that one of the, a lot of media outlets in Ukraine that were formerly the Russian language publications, they're being forced by the government to make a secondary publication in Ukrainian. This is just one example of the attempts of the Kiev government to, put distance between its country and Russia.
There's lots of places in the world, Africa, Asia, and indeed even in Europe, where there are people who think that they were somehow born in the wrong body. They were somehow put in a place that they didn't belong, and they'd like to redraw boundaries and so on. But that would be a recipe for total chaos in the world, wouldn't it? We can't go. Now, Ukraine is a state with borders. These have to be respected, whomsoever is in power in Kiev.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I think that has to do with part of the reason why, Russia has not recognized the self-proclaimed People's Republics as independent. It doesn't consider that place part of Russia because, it actually wants to respect the borders, the borders of Ukraine, even if they have political differences. They still consider that region Ukraine. But another thing that I think is interesting, that's necessary to talk about in discussion of how divided a lot of Ukrainians are. It's not only across the lines of ethnicity, but it's also divided along the lines of historical legacy. Like when I went to Donbass and Donetsk and Lugansk, there are statues of Lenin everywhere. There's statues to the heroes of the Great Patriotic War. There's museums. People are very patriotic about their Soviet past. And it bothers them very much that they see people marching in West Ukraine with, pictures of Stepan Bandera, a Nazi collaborator, people saying that he's a hero of Ukraine. And because that's actually the sentiment in a lot of the western part of the country, where they consider Donbass like some totalitarian hellhole of people who, love evil communism. So it's also divided along ideological lines, as I saw during my time there.
Of course, there are fascists in Western Ukraine. They wear their swastikas with pride, but it would be wrong, wouldn't it, to characterize the Ukrainian government, the Ukrainian people, with that quite startling trend. It's true, the only place in Europe you'll see people Sieg Heiling now is in Western Ukraine. But the great majority of Ukrainian people are not a part of that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. In any people, any nation around the world, there's various, there's a huge variety of political opinions, of affiliations. I think the vast majority of Ukrainians, just aren't really directly involved in politics at all. And I also would say that the Ukrainian government is not fascist. But the thing to note here is that when it came to power on the backs of many militias, militant organizations, and many of which were, neo-fascist. Some examples are the Azov Battalion, the Right Sector, a political party that has a military wing, and a lot of those militias have actually become parts. They're not just militias anymore; they've become official parts of the National Guard of Ukraine. And when you have organizations that have weapons and money from the state, and they're wearing swastikas, like you said, like swastika tattoos, waving swastikas, that's really concerning. And it also means that to a certain extent, the Ukrainian government that isn't fascist is still accountable to these armed fascists with guns to a certain extent.
Donald Courter, thanks for joining us on board the Sputnik.
Thank you.